Another day, another video, dog. Man, how y'all doing? It is the spectacular Jared the Analyst. And yes, I'm finally looking to start taking YouTube seriously and really start putting some consistent content together for you guys and for this channel. But with that out of the way, today I want us to take a look at yet another player who was underappreciated from the 2000s era, who I'm sure we all know of, but I don't think we thoroughly understand this player's impact on the game of basketball. And the player that I'm referring to would happen to be Chauncey Billups. Now, why Chauncey, you may be asking? And I'm sure most of us know about his time in Detroit, and more specifically the 2004 season, but Chauncey's impact in the NBA goes well beyond that season, which not only highlights the type of play that he helped to popularize, it also really speaks to his consistency and underrated longevity that I don't think too many people acknowledge, especially because at the time of this video being recorded, Chauncey Billups has still yet to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is just completely sad. But let's go back to the year 1997. And with the third pick in the 1997 NBA draft, the Boston Celtics would select Chauncey Billups, a 6'3" combo guard out of George Washington High School who could not only handle the ball, but was also an elite three-point shooter and could give you some elite level defense as well. Unfortunately though, this is where our first problem lies. See, because in the post-Magic Johnson era of the NBA, there was this idea that a quote-unquote traditional point guard was supposed to limit the amount of points that he scored while also racking up an absurd amount of assists, which is why players like Kevin Johnson, Mark Price, and most notably John Stockton were routinely averaging around 7, 8, 9, and even 10 plus assists a game. But if you were a shooting guard, you were relegated to either two roles. Either A, you took after Reggie Miller, who was an elite three-point shooter who got a majority of his shots off screens and off the catch, which thus breeded players such as Glenn Rice and Ray Allen. Or B, you took after Michael Jordan, a skilled guard who wasn't necessarily a great three-point shooter, but could score the ball at will, routinely putting up around 25 to 30 points per game. And this breeded players such as Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, and most notably, the late, great Kobe Bryant. But then there were the players who were both gifted facilitators and scorers. And unlike in today's game, where players like Russell Westbrook, Stephen Curry, and James Harden are praised for this, back in the late 90s to early 2000s, that play style was actually frowned upon. Coaches back then simply weren't used to players who could do both of those jobs, as it's been cited that Rick Pitino, who was the head coach for the Celtics at the time, didn't really know whether to use Chauncey as a point guard or a shooting guard. And because of this, the Celtics decided to trade Chauncey during the 1998 trade deadline, where he would play the remainder of the season with the Toronto Raptors. Chauncey would then get traded to the Denver Nuggets in January of 1999, and thankfully, Chauncey would be able to receive an opportunity to prove himself. During the 1999 season, Chauncey put up 14 points and 4 assists, and although his field goal percentage wasn't the best, he did shoot 36% from 3 and 91% from the free throw line. Unfortunately though, any signs of a possible jump were put on hold, as Chauncey will only play 13 games in the 99-2000 season, and this would also result in yet another trade, and where this time Chauncey would find himself on the Orlando Magic. However though, Chauncey wouldn't even play a game for the Magic, as he was still recovering from his injury, and the Magic would let Chauncey walk as a free agent in the summer of 2000. Chauncey would end up signing with the Minnesota Timberwolves, in which he would now play alongside superstar power forward Kevin Garnett. However, Chauncey was still unfortunately being misutilized as a shooting guard during the 2001 season, as he see a regression in both points and assists. But wisely in the following season, head coach Flip Saunders would move Chauncey to the point guard position, and in the 2002 season, Chauncey would average 12 points and 5.5 assists while shooting 42% from the field, 39% from 3, and 88% from the free throw line. But in the playoffs is where Chauncey would truly break out, as although Minnesota would get swept by the Dallas Mavericks, Flip Saunders decided to start Chauncey for the series, and Chauncey would take advantage, putting up 22 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 5 assists, while shooting 45% from the field and 40% from 3. What's even more interesting though is that Chauncey was able to hold Steve Nash to shooting just 38% from the field. And again, although this was a sweep for Dallas, Chauncey really showed a lot of potential in this series. However, this potential would not be utilized by the Timberwolves, as Chauncey would end up walking in free agency and finally signing with the Detroit Pistons. And around this time, Detroit was still building their identity as a team, but what was clear was that the players on this team were not flashy. They were not a marketable franchise like New York or Los Angeles. They didn't have any larger-than-life players like a Shaquille O'Neal or a Michael Jordan, just players who had a chip on their shoulder, never receiving the opportunity they should have gotten, but now that all changed. See, in the 2003 season, Chauncey Billups would finally be promoted to a full-time starter, and he flourished, averaging a career-best 16 points and 4 assists while shooting 42% from the field, 39% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. And back behind solid production from Chauncey, a defensive savant in Ben Wallace, solid scoring from Rip Hamilton, and a young Tayshaun Prince, the Pistons would finish the season with a 52-30 record. Heading into the first round, they would match up with the Orlando Magic, and after going down 2-3 in the series, Chauncey played out of his mind in Game 6, dropping 40 points while shooting 48% from the field, 50% from three, and 91% from the free throw line, as the Pistons won decisively 103-88. Then in Game 7, Chauncey was not finished, as he would drop 37 points while shooting 58% from the field, 43% from three, and making all 12 of his free throws. Unfortunately, though, in the next round against the Philadelphia 76ers, Chauncey would only be available for 2 out of the 6 games due to an injury that he would sustain. However, Chauncey would be available for Game 6 of that series, in which he would play amazing in overtime, as Chauncey would lead the Pistons and the entire game in points scored in overtime with 9, hitting 3 big threes, especially the last one, which would put the Pistons up 3 points and clinch the game and the series for them, allowing them to move on into the conference finals against the New Jersey Nets. This unfortunately would be the end of their season, as the Nets would sweep the Pistons and move on into the NBA Finals. Now, going into the 2003-2004 season, the Pistons knew that they were one piece away from the promised land. And with a new head coach in Larry Brown and the new acquisition of Rasheed Wallace, the Pistons were now set. In the now iconic 2004 season, Chauncey Billups would put up similar stats as he did the prior year, as the Pistons would finish with a 54-28 record, the third best record in the Eastern Conference, but the playoffs is finally where Chauncey and the Pistons will be recognized. In the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks, Chauncey would put up 18 points and 7 assists, while the Pistons would win in 5 games. Then in a rematch of the 2003 Eastern Conference Finals, the Pistons would match up with the New Jersey Nets, and after a hard-fought 7 games, they'd advance to the conference finals against the Indiana Pacers. This was another defensive-oriented series, but one that would see the Pistons win in 6 games, and for the first time in 14 years, the Pistons would make it to the NBA Finals. And in the finals stood their polar opposites, the Los Angeles Lakers, a team who had 2 superstars in Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, played in a large market, and had ego issues that would routinely interfere with how the team was managed. But the Pistons did not back down. In a series that shocked the world, the mighty Los Angeles Lakers, who had dominated the league for the previous 5 seasons, were put to rest, and Chauncey Billups would put up 21 points and 5 assists while shooting 51% from the field, 47% from 3, and 93% from the free throw line. And for his efforts, Chauncey was rewarded with the 2004 Finals MVP. A far cry from the days just 3 to 4 years prior, where 2 teams allowed him to just walk in free agency. 5 teams who didn't believe in Chauncey, but who were now having to witness the asset that they once had bring the Motor City a title. And ironically, none of those franchises, outside of the Boston Celtics, would end up winning a championship during the remainder of Chauncey's career. And after the 2004 season, the Pistons would make it back to the finals in 2005, with Chauncey being able to snag an all-defensive team this year. Then they make it to the conference finals in 2006, with Chauncey not only being selected to an all-defensive team, but to his first all-star team and all-NBA team. Then they'd make it back to the conference finals in 2007, with Chauncey again being an all-star. And in his last full season with Detroit, he once again led the Pistons to the conference finals, in which they would fall to the Boston Celtics. But wait, because crazy enough, in 2009, when Chauncey was now traded back to the Denver Nuggets, the Nuggets would end up making the conference finals, as Chauncey would again be selected to an All-Star and All-NBA team while making his 7th straight conference finals appearance. And to just show you how impressive that is, the only other players who've been able to make it to at least 7+ consecutive conference finals appearances have been Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, and LeBron James, routinely helping to lead his team to a deep playoff run. Yet again, this man is not in the Hall of Fame. From there though, Chauncey was starting to creep into his mid-30s, and he steadily declined after 2010 before retiring altogether at the end of the 2013-2014 season, retiring a 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-Defensive Performer, 3-time All-NBA Performer, but most importantly, a champion and a Finals MVP to prove that he indeed was one of the most impactful players of his time. So with that said, I hope I was able to shed some light on a player who time and time again was overlooked, but was able to prove himself through consistency and helping to revolutionize the combo guard that we know so well today. And for Chauncey Billups and the efforts that he showed and the entire Detroit Pistons roster during that time, I just want to say that it's truly a shame that you guys are not in the Hall of Fame. Although Ben Wallace was inducted this past year, Chauncey and a lot of other contributors to that team do not get the recognition that they deserve. But anyways, guys, please let me know what you thought about the video in the comments. Thank you guys for tuning in. And like always, I'll catch you in the next one.